Hi, I'm Spiro, joined with Sibel Edmonds, and this is Newsbud Spotlight. Making international headlines this week was the assassination of Russian Ambassador Andrei Karlov on Monday evening as he was delivering a speech in Ankara, Turkey. The assassin has been identified as a 22-year-old Turkish police officer. Sibel, what do we know about the assassin so far?
Hi, Spiro. Mevlut Altuntaş, 22 years old. He went to police academy. It's a vocational school, and according to the documents that has been released so far, he graduated from the police academy less than 2 years ago. So he's 22 years old. He had graduated 2 years prior to that from the police academy. And this is not in central Turkey or eastern Turkey. It's in western Turkey. It's in Izmir area, which is in the Aegean coast and known to be pretty, I would say, Western. And if you look at it, there are several U.S.-related bases in Izmir, etc. And as far as I have found, neither him nor his family have been extremists in terms of, what today is dubbed as Islamic extremist. And basically, that's what we know about this guy. Now, granted, some information has come out saying that he was one of the bodyguards or the second-tier bodyguards protection for President Erdogan in Turkey. I'm not sure how accurate that information is because, as I said, this young guy graduated from the police academy only 2 years before that. And considering, the coup attempt in Turkey and the threat that Erdogan has been under, not only by Gulen FETÖ movement, but also all sorts of other factions inside Turkey, he takes his bodyguards and protection and etc. very, very seriously. So personally, I doubt that he was in some second-tier protective unit for President Erdogan because, as I said, he's 22. He's been out of school only 2 years before that.
Now, there has been some claims of connections to the Gulen network with this guy. His family, his entire family was detained, his sister, his parents, other siblings. Since then, they have been released. Now, what do you make of this attempt to connect this guy with Gulen? I mean, that was one of the first things that popped in my head when I heard that he was with the Turkish police force. I immediately thought of the Gulen movement infiltrating all of the police forces and academics and everything. And we've also seen this, what's being referred to as a purge of the Gulen movement there in Turkey recently. What do you make of that, Sibel?
I would say it is too early to draw a conclusion based on information being put out by the Turkish media, which is currently truly under influence. On the other hand, as you just emphasized, it's been known for years and years that Fethullah Gulen's cult movement, which is a CIA front because he is here in the United States, he's been working on Operation Gladio B with the CIA since 1998. In fact, it was CIA airplane that brought Fethullah Gulen when he was most wanted in Turkey into the United States. He's been working closely with the State Department and the CIA. I would say he and his operatives who are operating under the CIA and State Department since 1998, but it is too early. For example, we know that Russia has sent 18 investigators. Okay, these are top-notch investigators into Turkey. And Russia is already saying it's too early. We haven't even had time to investigate this case. So to go right away and say this was, Gulen movement or etc. is premature. And later, I guess these people who are operating under journalism, alternative journalism, they don't give a hoot because what do they have to lose? They don't have reputation to start with. But you don't go and run things without investigating it. So in the next few days, as we start getting reports from Russia and their investigation result, we will be able to talk about the fact and the connections. But right now it's too premature. But as you said, for years and years, Gulen CIA movement has been penetrating Turkish military, especially Turkish police forces, and especially Turkish police academies. Because what Gulen does and his movement, they actually start grooming these kids when they're in middle school, high school, okay? And because they have the connections with the police force, academies, etc., all over Turkey, they actually hand them the test questions. So they make sure that their groomed pupils, when they go and take the test, they rank high and they get accepted into police academy. Same thing for their graduations. They are handed out the test results so they can go and take the test and graduate, at the top of their class because they're part of the movement. And the movement's players within the Turkish police force is high ranking. I know thousands have been purged, but as of right now, there will be many thousands still remaining in there. So the fact that this guy, Mevlut Altuntaş, went to police academy, the fact that the government says he had some connections, those are absolutely noteworthy. I would not disregard it. I would say they are serious. But other than that, to put something conclusive right now would be premature. So rather than doing that, as it is the case with any investigative work, you need to look at who benefits and the timing of what took place here, the assassination, the timing of the assassination. So when you look at that, then you start separating those who would benefit from this assassination and the chaos following the assassination and potential fallout that would come out of this assassination. And then you start looking at people with the motives, okay? So we are looking at this extremely critical timing for this assassination, okay? Just 24 hours or less than that after this assassination, Iran, Russia, and Turkey, they had this conference, the talk on Syria. Well, that's the major deal. Again, for people who don't understand the region, they don't understand the language and everything, just the fact that Russia and Iran is a Shia Muslim country, okay? So Iran's interest and stakes in Syria is totally different than Turkey's interest and stakes in Syria. Then, of course, in the middle, you have Russia. So the fact that these three were willing to set up this conference, to sit around the table and jointly come up with a plan for Syria, and I'm not saying that plan is great or magnificent or anything, that is very important, very important. Well, who's outside this circle? Because those interests or whatever they are reaching during that conference, which they did to a certain degree last Tuesday, it is exactly the opposite of what the United States, CIA, what the Western countries like UK and NATO want. So these are the powers, these are the operatives, these are the players who don't want that kind of alliances between Russia, Turkey, and Iran. Okay? They don't want it. First of all, Turkey has been despised. US has been pulling Turkey towards its objectives, whether it's Syria or elsewhere. And Russia also realizes the incredible importance of Turkey, both geographically, strategically, politically, in terms of Syria. So in this case, you have had some unhappy players here. The unhappy players being CIA/NATO, USA. They didn't want this conference. They wanted to jeopardize it. So that timing says the party with interest to cause via assassination another fallout between Turkey and Russia, the main party is the United States of America. Okay, that's one. Number two, we have been witnessing the thawing of the relationship between Russia and Turkey. Well, Russia and Turkey now, they have signed the initial stage of it, this Russia-Turkish streamline. That's going to take the pipeline from Russia directly into Turkey and then southeastern part of Europe, okay? Guess who's not happy with this? Of course, you're looking at NATO, you're looking at USA, okay? They don't want this deal. They don't want that kind of close relationship, whether it's in commerce or pipeline or any kind of political alliances between Russia and Turkey. So during the last 2 weeks, that case of Turkish streamline has been gaining momentum with who being unhappy? The United States, NATO. So then on top of it, you look at all the overt threats that the United States has been issuing against Russia. I'm saying overt because it is overt. That they are going to take revenge for Russia's supposed meddling with US elections. In fact, just in the past few days, the United States, renewed its sanction plans on Russia over Ukraine, right? The whole Ukraine was caused by NATO and the United States with CIA operatives and with backers such as George Soros, right? So you're seeing this over tension increase between Russia and the United States. You see the thawing relationship between Turkey and Russia. You see this proximity to some sort of understanding and agreement between the actors Iran, Russia, and Turkey. Well, all these things have been pissing the United States off. And what has been the United States modus operandi? It's usually countering these types of threats that it perceives to its own interest, which is the interest of the Western military-industrial complex, which is the interest of the Western-owned oil companies, okay, is what to do? To cause chaos, to cause civil wars, to have these in order to prevent these types of developments. Well, what does this assassination accomplish? It has brought about this chaotic tension and a question mark when it comes to Russia and Turkey alliance, because we're going to see how this is going to develop. But we can start after seeing who benefits, who wants chaos in the region, who wants more tension entering Turkey-Russia relations. Then we start looking at some of the possible culprits for this assassination and go through this process as a process of elimination, okay? Now, Erdogan, Turkey, they don't have any reason to have something like this, okay? I mean, look, they're having this conference with Iran and Russia. They have been really, really excited and passionate about having this pipeline between Russia and Turkey, right? And what has been taking place in Aleppo, so that we can exclude and say, well, Turkey, at least government, the current government of Turkey, Erdogan's interest doesn't pair up with this assassination. You get rid of that. Well, who does that really leave behind? Again, the ignorant outlets here in the Western countries, they say, oh yeah, this was done by Fethullah Gulen. Then you have other ignoramus people who are saying, no, this was the CIA operation. Because for these people, again, who don't understand the history, geography, politics, language of these areas, they don't even have the understanding to know that you're not looking at two separate entities. You don't look at CIA or Fethullah Gulen's network. Fethullah Gulen's network has been operating under the CIA umbrella. That is a fact. That has been an established fact by documents and by nearly 20 years of consistent relationship history. So for these people to say it was CIA, US, or it was Fethullah Gulen's organization, they don't even know what they're talking about because you're looking at the same entity. Fethullah Gulen, this preacher, this mullah, this operative, he's already 80 years old. He's senile. He's not even making public appearances. From what I have been getting from my sources, he's now enabled because he has severe dementia that has set, okay? He can't even form sentences. So you don't get that kind of a guy causing all this stuff, whether it's the coup attempt or this particular assassination. He's sitting in his Pennsylvania mansion. That's all he is. The operatives operating under the CIA, that's a different story. So again, everything that I'm looking at, everything that I'm reading, and with the information that we have obtained thus far, everything points towards the United States interest, CIA, NATO, and as part of it, Fethullah Gulen movement. Because there are no other parties on the ground with vested interest to cause this. It's not the Russian part. It's not the current elected Turkish government. Okay? And it's not Assad's regime, because this actually is for the benefit of Bashar Assad. Okay? So you preclude those, and then what are you left with? So that's very important. And as I said, you look at the sanctions, you look at the overt threats, you look at the timing, that already gives you provides you with a pretty good picture of whose interest this was meant to serve. And in a few days, as we start getting more information from Russian investigators in Turkey, and supposedly the Turkish intelligence agents and police are cooperating and giving them access, well, because they have, again, vested interest. They don't want to see this relationship that has just shown the signs of thawing go back into that same strain period. You know, we had that shooting down of the pilot, Russian pilot, by Turkish government. And later, during the coup, it came out that people who actually did that were part of the CIA Gulen movement. And it was a rogue operation. It was not an order that came from the elected government to the military to shut down this plane. No, the people who basically made this happen, they were some of those officers who were involved in the coup against the current elected Turkish government. But on the other hand, there are certain things that we need to keep an eye on, okay? As this assassination took place in Turkey against the Russian ambassador, he got assassinated, within the same 24 hours period, we have had another assassination. We don't know exactly what kind of hit or murder it was. This high-level senior Russian diplomat, Polshikov, and he resides in this highly secure apartment flat penthouse in Moscow, okay? And they do have very, very good security there. He was found dead in his apartment. His wife supposedly was present, and he was shot to death. He was murdered, and the gun was found under the sink in the kitchen in the apartment. So far, that's the only information we have received. Now, it would be very interesting to get more information on this particular case, considering the timing. You have one diplomat being assassinated in Turkey. You have another diplomat with Latin American ties being shot to death in Moscow within the same 24 hours period should get anyone's interest. Now, again, looking at the facts, and there are very little available, it's possibly a domestic situation. Because for someone to walk in and let's say kill the guy, and then leave the wife as a witness, to the ID in the apartment unharmed, and then place the gun, the weapon used to kill the guy, under the kitchen sink. I did work with various organizations that were involved in investigating cases, whether it's child abuse or murder cases. When you look at that, everything basically point out to a possible domestic situation. It's usually, and I don't want to insult women, I'm one, usually it's something that a woman would do, kill the husband and then go and put it under the kitchen sink and stay in the apartment and dial the police. Maybe it's a hysterical woman who ended up doing it. We don't know. But it's very important to find answers on this particular assassination or the shot or the kill, because if it is not the wife, then I would say the timing is really suspect, because then it would say on top of it, you have had Putin's driver, right? And that was last September. It was Putin's favorite driver. And he ended up in this really mysterious freak show car accident, and he died. And there has been many articles, analysis saying that the way it took place, it points to foul play. Again, we don't have the whole story on that. Is it possible that with these increased tension and overt hostility between the US and Russia, we are looking at chains of assassinations that are taking place? Is it possible? I would say once we get more information on Polshikov's death, I would be saying yes, it's highly possible. And if that's the case, then we have to expect retaliation from other side party as well. Just a few days ago, a very high level member of NATO, he's the Auditor General of NATO, getting killed. And they tried to make it look like suicide. And we, Newsbud, had a breaking story on that. Well, okay, we still don't have all the answers on that particular case. But when you start looking Russian politicians, diplomats getting assassinated, getting killed or suicided, and then you see some of the Western players high level start turning up dead, then it would be logical, it would be reasonable to say that we have entered a totally new stage in the increasing tension between the West and Russia. And I would say the sanctions, the timing of it again is very, very important. And we are going to keep an eye on this. I would say keep your eye open and look for the first reports that's going to start leaking into the media coming from Russian government. That's when we're going to have more information to work with. I have to say for sure, this guy was not ISIS extremist, the guy Altuntash, who was the assassin. And then there are other questionable facts surrounding the case as well. There are these timing, for example, from the time that Ambassador Karlov was shot dead. I mean, he was on the floor. It took 47 minutes for the ambulance to come and pick up his body. Well, this took place in Ankara, that's capital city of Turkey. This was like a lone gunman inside. I would find that a pretty outrageous fact, the fact that it took 47 minutes for the forces to neutralize this guy and for the ambulance people, paramedics to get to this guy. 47 minutes is an awfully long time, even in Turkey and with Turkish traffic.
Well, no doubt that is a long time to wait for an ambulance. Now, the chances of this guy surviving, being shot up to 8 times is probably highly unlikely anyways, but from my understanding of the reports is that it took about 20 minutes for the SWAT team or the Special Forces team to arrive there. Then they engaged in about a 15-minute shootout with the guy, and then they got to clear the building. So no doubt it's eating away precious minutes. We don't, as you said, we don't have all the facts at this point in time, but as you said, through process of elimination and who stands to benefit from this, and with the timing of everything, with these talks, these very important, crucial talks between Turkey, Russia, and Iran, all of it is very suspect. This guy having supposed connections, we'll see, with the Gulen movement, aka CIA. As you pointed out before, 6 days prior to the assassination, the former deputy of the CIA, who served as the acting director of the CIA twice, Michael Morell, called for the U.S. to respond to Russian meddling in the U.S. elections, alleged Russian meddling in the U.S. elections, by both overt and painful means to Putin directly. And also 3 days before this assassination, Obama is alleged to have issued a veiled threat towards Russians for some type of retaliation for the unproven claims that Russia somehow influenced. And then, as you said, all of these other assassinations or mysterious deaths or suicides that have been taking place of high-ranking members on both sides, it very well could point to something that's going on greater behind the scenes. We're going to be keeping tabs on all of this here. Sibel, any final words?
No, absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought up those overt threats. And I think that's highly important. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly the English wording for this. If it walks like a dog, talks like a dog, it's a duck. Is that how it goes, that saying? Because when you look at these, the sanctions, the overt threats, you look at being intimidated by these talks. I mean, everything on the ground right now points out towards one direction, and that direction goes westward. And that was a very, very good point to bring up.
Well, that'll wrap up this episode of Newsbud Spotlight. Joined with Sibel Edmonds, I'm Spiro. If you found this video useful, share it. Newsbud presentations are only made possible by our viewers. Subscribe to newsbud.com today to become part of the Newsbud community, where soon you will find exclusive content only available to our subscribers.